Hello, everyone. Welcome to Courageous Parenting Summit, transforming challenges into opportunities. Today, we have here with us Julie Skolnick. Welcome, Julie.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me, Philza and Edith.
So glad to have you here. I am Filza Jabin, mother of three beautiful children, transformational teen and parents leadership coach. And we are committed to empowering parents and children by building connection with love.
Hi, everyone. I'm Edith Wolek. I'm a transformational leadership coach, mother of three beautiful children, and best-selling author. Most importantly, I keep saying mother of three because it's so powerful to say that, because I am a mother, and many of us here and parents that we are speaking, they are parents and they get to be supported. So I would love to welcome Julie Skolnick, and welcome. And
Thank you. I'm just wondering if you only interview people who have three children, because I also have three children.
it looks like most of us are having three children. We generating parents with speakers with three children, definitely. So let me share with you a little bit about Julie. So Julie Skolnick is a founder of With Understanding Comes Calm LLC, passionately guides parents of gifted and distractible children, mentors 2E adults, trains educators, and advises professionals on how to bring out the best to raise self-confidence in their twice exceptional students and clients. Julie is the author of award-winning book, Gifted and Distractible. Love it. Yay! Great to see the cover. Yay. Fantastic. So, Julie, tell us about your vision and what do you do?
Yeah, so in my bio, Edith, you use three synonyms: gifted and distractible, 2E, and twice exceptional. So I'm guessing that your audience is scratching their head going, what does this woman do? And what are those things? So I think if we start there, it probably makes a lot of sense. So the name of my book is Gifted and Distractible, and the field is known as twice exceptional, or within the gifted field. And so the twice exceptional 2E gifted and distractible profile is one where a person, and I say person instead of child because we don't outgrow our 2E-ness or our twice exceptionality. They are identified as gifted with a learning difference. And that learning difference can be anything from ADHD to autism, dyslexia, processing speed, executive functioning challenges, anxiety. They're just a whole host of co-occurrent learning differences that can occur with the gifted profile. And most people are surprised by that. But in the field, it's called 2E or twice exceptional. But so people can relate to it, I call it gifted and distractible. And I work directly with parents all over the world to help them raise their beautiful 2E children, of which I have three 2E children. And I work with adults who are also identified as 2E to help them gain professional and personal fulfillment. And I train teachers to help them as they educate 2E learners.
Okay, wow. As I am learning about 2E through your book. So can you tell
Awesome.
us when you talk about 2E children in your book, you talk about giftedness as three layers cake. So what do you mean by that?
Right. So the three-layer cake of giftedness is how I help people learn what I mean by giftedness, because most people will say to me, well, Julie, what do you mean by distractible? But distractible, that's all the things that I just talked about, all those co-occurrent learning differences. But gifted, people make an assumption. They use one word to describe gifted, and that word is smart. Most people think that's what gifted means. But really, that's just this much of what gifted means. So I created a three-layer cake because in the United States where I live, there is no one definition of giftedness. The 50 states within the United States, some have definitions, some don't. And there's no mandate about giftedness. And so most often, gifted definitions do talk about a person's ability and maybe the need to differentiate within a classroom, but never takes into account the social emotional needs of the gifted. And that's really where the crux of being gifted comes into play. So the 3-layer cake, if you imagine a 3-layer cake with what we call frosting in the United States, but I think people in Europe and elsewhere say icing. So that's above, around, and between the 3 layers. That icing represents that assumption of smartness. That is the ability. There is some incredible ability that a gifted human has. But then there are these 3 layers or these 3 characteristics, and they are asynchronous development, perfectionism, and what's known in gifted parlance as overexcitabilities, or you can think of as intensities. And even though the term overexcitabilities sounds negative, like it's too much, that's actually a misinterpretation of the Polish word where the psychologist Kazimierz Dabrowski actually coined the term, and it really should be superstimulant abilities. So it's this incredible way to connect to the world in an organic way. Okay, so let's review. The frosting or the icing, that's the smart, that's the assumption we have about gifted. That's the superpower. Then we have these 3 layers. Asynchronous development, which is where we develop all of our skills, our strengths and our struggles in sort of an uneven way, right? If you have super strengths, not everything's going to be to that level. Sometimes we say easy things are hard and hard things are easy for our gifted and distractible learners, right? How many of you out there have a brilliant kid who you just can't get to brush their teeth? That happens all the time, right?
All the
So we have
time,
this
all the time.
all the time. So we have an asynchronous development, or getting out the door in the morning, or getting to bed at night, or doing the chores, or getting the homework, or turning the homework in, all of those things, right? So that's that asynchronous development. Then we have perfectionism, because smart kids are told that they're smart all the time. And so they have these expectations. And then at some point, they hit a wall, whether it's their social emotional challenges that they experience or based on their learning difference. And if they have these expectations for themselves, they know other people have high expectations for them, and they feel like they can't meet those expectations, then the other side of that perfectionism can be anxiety. And last but not least is what I really think is the crux of the giftedness definition in the 3-layer cake, which are those overexcitabilities. So just quickly to let you know, because nothing is simple when you talk about giftedness and twice exceptionality. Those overexcitabilities come in 5 areas: intellectual overexcitability, that rage to learn; emotional overexcitability, that deep empathy and reactivity; the imaginational overexcitability, incredible abilities to do creative things; sensual overexcitability or sensory, where you are a sensory seeker or a sensory avoider; and psychomotor overexcitability, where you need to move to learn. So that was my very big thumbnail of what that 3-layer cake definition means.
Wonderful definition, much understandable for us.
Thank
So
you.
thank you for sharing that with us.
Sure.
Edith, you're muted if you're asking any question.
Thank you. So, Julie, you were talking about your book, and it touched my heart because it's really powerful to support parents and children, letting them know, to understand what's happening and how they can support each other and get supported. So when you're talking about parents and children with who have been diagnosed with some kind of disability or illness, autoimmune illness, or any illness, should the parents talk to their children about their diagnosis? And I had my personal experience about my adult child, which was really difficult because he's an adult and I don't need to know, like I cannot know what's happening. So it's in a different criteria because he's an adult already. He doesn't have to tell me his diagnosis. But is it important for parents to share the diagnosis with children in particular?
So it absolutely depends. First of
Oh,
all, first of all, in the realm of twice exceptionality, you can't just have anybody evaluate your child. The evaluator must know and understand giftedness and twice exceptionality. So in my book, there's actually a list of questions to ask practitioners to ensure that they're appropriate, because there are so many instances of misdiagnosis. If you can imagine being in an environment where you have this three-layer cake, right? You have this, let's say you have intellectual overexcitability. So you have a rage to learn and you want to be fed information through a fire hose, but you're given something drip by drip. Your behavior is going to stink. And you might look like you are a child identified with ADHD. So first of all, you have to make sure that the diagnoses are actually correct. And so you have to really consider, what does the environment look like? Is this kid behaving this way in all environments, or is it only in school, or is it only at home? Right? Are they keeping it together all day long, masking and falling apart at home? Or are they a mess at school because school stinks for them? And so first of all, we have to really understand what's going on for the child. And then I would never, ever talk about it as a disability. That word I don't even use because it compares you to somebody else. It doesn't talk about you for you. So it's a learning difference. So if we talk about it as far as, let's learn how your brain works, let's learn how you learn best, then yes, that makes sense. And by the way, if you have a practitioner identifying or diagnosing your child, they should be the one to help the child understand scientifically. I don't care if the child's 5 years old or 18 years old, they should be talking to that child about how their brain works in that vein, including their incredible strengths, because there will be incredible strengths.
Thank you.
So as I'm reading, I'm going through your book, so I have a lot of questions through your book. So in your book, Gifted and Destructible, so you talk about uncanny likeness between giftedness and ADHD. Can you share a little bit about the parents? What should they consider if their child is gifted and also identified with ADHD?
Yeah, so in the United States, we have something called the DSM-5, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, fifth edition, that comes out from our psychology field. And they specifically talk about what you need to see in order to identify ADHD as a diagnosis. And they list a whole bunch of symptoms, lots of them having to do with executive functioning skills, disorganization or impulsivity and this type of thing. So there's probably, I don't remember, maybe 12 or 15 symptoms they describe. And in order for there to be a diagnosis, you have to see 6 or more symptoms. They have to be present for at least 6 months and in 2 or more settings. So in other words, if you say, I really want my kid to focus at school, let me do something about their focusing at school. I'm kind of like, don't change the kid, change the environment, right? So is it really ADHD? Is it giftedness, like I had just said? And there has to be clear evidence that the symptoms interfere with or reduce the quality of social, school, or work functioning. So in the book, you probably saw, and I'm actually going to share my screen, this document, The Uncanny Likeness Between Gifted and ADHD. And I literally take internal and external challenges and I compare gifted responses and ADHD responses, and they look identical. And the reason I created this chart was so that people could see just how relevant and important the environment is to a diagnosis and the reality of ADHD. So it's very important to not just, sometimes, and I support and train teachers all the time, and I love doing that. I have incredible half-day trainings I do. I have lots of ways that I work with teachers and administrators. But we don't want to be trying to make their life easier in the classroom by changing our kids.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Can you tell us some more tips around which is there? I know there are a lot of tips in your book, and it started from the beginning. So that was amazing and different in your book, which I have started. So can you share a few more tips from your books for our gifted children and gifted parents?
Yeah, so it's really for gifted and distractible parents and children, but actually best practices for twice exceptional children are best practices for all children. And in fact, twice exceptional adults are loving the book too. So first of all, let me just say that the book is organized in 3 parts, and that those 3 parts are what I call my cycle for success. You have to start with a deep understanding of the profile in general and your child or yourself specifically. Then you can move into strategies. And the book has 200 pages of strategies for parenting these twice exceptional children. And some of those strategies are actually really relevant in the classroom as well as for 2E adults. And then once we have strategies that are specific and tailored to what we understand about our child, then we have to learn how to advocate collaboratively. So often parents and teachers are knocking heads against each other, don't know how to communicate or collaborate, feel like they're not appreciated or understood. And that's really toxic for trying to help a 2E child thrive. So the book talks about how to collaborate together as parents and teachers. I guess I will say that you probably came across the fact that there's an acronym in the book called PRAISE, and that PRAISE acronym actually stands for 6 categories of strategies, and that's hence the 200 pages of strategies. So strategies for personal connection, reframe, anticipate. That's our biggest category, because guess what, parents? You know when your kid trips up. You know when it's hard for them. Transitions, maybe the morning, maybe the evening, maybe after being with a certain person. You can anticipate so much, and there's so much there that you can learn from rather than hoping, I hope tomorrow will be different. That's really probably not going to happen. So how do we anticipate incentives and choices, sense of humor, very important, and exercise. So those are the 6 categories of strategies that I teach. Most important is the first one, the first category of strategies, which is personal connection. So often parents will share, like, I don't even have time because we're trying to get all the things done. We're trying to check all the things off our list. So when's the last time you hung out with your kid and had fun? So many parents will say, 6 weeks ago, I think, maybe we went for ice cream, you know? And so spending, let's say, commit to 15 minutes this week to sit down with your kid and let them choose what they want to do, ideally non-screen, and just notice what they're doing while they're doing what they're doing, whether they're drawing. So you notice, you don't say, well, why are you making the hair purple on that person? No, you say something like, wow, you're making the hair purple. And I see you're pressing really hard with your crayon to make it darker. Or if they're building with Legos, you say, oh, I see you're building a rectangle. It looks like maybe you're making a garage for your little toy cars I see over there. You wouldn't say something like, why aren't you making a pattern and doing more colors than just white with your Legos? You wouldn't say, I don't think that entrance is big enough for your toy car. No, you're just noticing stuff so that the child feels, I call this shining a spotlight time, feels like there's a spotlight on them, because who spends 100% of their attention on anyone anymore, or has 100% of anybody's attention spent on them? So this is a really effective way to do that. Very important to do it one-on-one. Can't have siblings around. And really important to try to do this at least for 15 minutes, at least once a week, if not once a day. And then make sure that you've talked about it with your child, depending on their age, so you make sure they know when you're going to transition out. You cannot transition to homework. You cannot transition to chores. You have to transition to something that the child looks forward to, because the worst thing would be to spend this time and then have a meltdown about it ending. So every strategy in the book is that holistic. It takes into account all of the potentials, the potential triggers, the potential response, and what could maybe go wrong, so that we anticipate and plan for it.
Mm.
So one more question around this, as you're talking about spending one-on-one time with kids. So there are many parents who are saying that my kids doesn't want to spend time with me. They're busy with their things. What area, being a parent, I must look into why my child is not ready to spend time with me? What are the areas I need to work on? Can you put light on it?
Well, I'm going to guess the time that parents have spent. I mean, look, what do parents do? Parents teach, Parents
Correct.
judge, parents, so
Control.
maybe it hasn't been fun. So instead of trying so hard and asking all the time, can we spend time? Can we spend time? Walk up to your kid when they're doing the thing. Even if you hate the thing they're doing and you really have no interest in the thing, just notice, even if it's the dreaded video games, which, I have a whole part of a chapter on structuring screen time because it really is toxic for neurodiverse brains. But even if they're doing that and you start asking questions about what they're doing, if they're annoyed by it, back off. Try another time. Hey, I was thinking about that video game I saw you playing with all those blocks. Like, what were you trying to do? What was the goal? That's so interesting. Ask another question. So just try to meld into their time as opposed to like, let's schedule our time and you have to be in this very rigid structure.
Thank
Oh,
you.
thank
That's
you.
really helpful. And I'm sure our parents will find it helpful as well. I want to go back and cycle back to misdiagnosis. What do you do if you have a child that has been diagnosed with many different things?
We'll say conditions.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And many
conditions.
different ones. What do you do in that sense if you have so many different diagnoses?
Well, I mean, if your child was diagnosed appropriately and has multiple diagnoses, um, so first of all, let's just back up. We're not trying to fix our kids. They're not broken. We're not trying to change our kids or even make them, comply all the time to us because that's not their essence, right? So the number one thing is to remind yourself what this kid loves. If your kid is spending all their time focusing on the deficit and remediating and in tutoring and in social skills and in all the things, that's a really yucky life. We wouldn't want to do that. We have to make sure that our kids have time in their passion areas. And quite frankly, the best way to teach a child skills, particularly executive functioning skills, which our twice exceptional children are famously weak in, is to use a passion of theirs. Suddenly, if you task me with doing something that I absolutely love and am fascinated by, all of these deficits fall away. I had a client once whose child was severely dysgraphic with written expression disorder. And one day, the parent, my client, walked into his room and opened up like this pad of paper that was on his floor. And this kid had writing that was like impossible to read. He was 14 years old. And mom opens this journal, and inside it almost looked typed, this gorgeous handwritten, what was it? Well, the child had read Harry Potter maybe 100 times and literally was finding the patterns and the ways that the author actually missed a fact or didn't have the same fact in the next book. And he was keeping track of those things. And that was so interesting and so important to him that he actually took so much time to write those things down. So focusing on deficits isn't always the greatest approach.
Yeah,
So no
focusing on.
matter what, yeah, sorry. So no matter what diagnosis you have, no matter what, like you should still look into it and get support, but also look at the positive things that your child is doing and creating and
I would
finding the
actually flip it over. I would flip it over and I
Okay.
would say, I want you to be
First.
strength-based first, and then address the things they're getting in your child's way. Because if your child is trying to do something they really want to do, something gets in their way, then they have motivation to address it, as opposed to addressing it because somebody wants me to.
Powerful. Thank you.
So as we are coming to an end of our interview, I'm sure you have some free gift for our audience. Can you please explain it? Talk more
Sure.
about it.
You guys are going to get what's called the Parent Toolbox. And this is an incredible resource that includes a strategy cheat sheet, sort of kind of going over sort of my top strategies and explanation of what 2E means, how to help your child through their big feelings, 3 strategies to get things done, explaining different types of overexcitabilities that we touched on today, and then strategies for emotion regulation. So that parent toolbox is what you will be getting.
Beautiful.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
So,
Really appreciate your presence, your knowledge, and your wisdom. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
so do you have any final words for our parents to say? Like, what should we focus on just to see the strength of our kids?
I think you have to realize, parents, that you are exactly the parent who should be parenting your child. So often parents feel like they don't know what they're doing, they're alone, they're afraid. And if I don't do this, or I do too much of this, or I don't do enough of that, I'm going to ruin my kid's life, you know? And the truth of the matter, your kid just really wants a personal connection with you. And I would focus on that above all. Please, I invite you to go to withunderstandingcomescalm.com, which, by the way, think of those words, with understanding comes calm. It's true. And there you'll find all sorts of resources, free resources, our newsletter. You can click on the parenting tab, the 2E adult tab. If you are in the habit of buying gifts for teachers, I'm telling you what, this is the best gift you can buy your teachers. So if you have any questions for us, support@withunderstandingcomescalm.com is how you can reach me.
Well,
Thank you so much.
Julie. Thank you
My
so
pleasure.
much.
Thank you.
Bye for
Thank you.
bye for
Bye-bye.
now.